Does anyone want to show the mean absolute deviation calculator? Did anyone do the mean absolute deviation calculator? I guess the first question.
Yes.
Hey, would you like to show us your calculator?
Don't be shy. Because if there are mistakes, then the worst thing that's going to happen is you learn something new. Don't be shy.
Anyone? So everyone has a perfectly working mean absolute deviation calculator, and they know exactly what's going on in the slide. I mean, in the screen.
I can show mine.
All right, and what's your name?
Tanush, I showed yesterday.
Okay, sure. So would you like to share your screen?
Okay, 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Okay, so here I declared the numbers. Here's where you plug in the numbers that you want to find the MAD of. Then over here it finds the average of them. Then it goes into the method over here. And then instead of repeating the same process of finding the absolute value each time, it just does it there's just this part of code to do it 5 times. And then it finds the average minus the number. And then it sends it back to the earlier. And then it adds the averages up and divides it by 5 to get the MAD. And then it prints it out.
Yep, that looks good. So can you run it and show us what comes out?
It's taking some time.
Yep. So that looks good. So congratulations, you've made a working mean absolute deviation calculator. Good job.
Thank you.
So again, don't be afraid to share your code. The worst thing that can happen is we help you, right? No one's going to say anything, but congratulations to Tanush. He's been volunteering, and if anyone else wants to volunteer next time, we'd be happy to have you show your code. So moving on to our main topic for today, we are going to be looking at classes and objects. So classes are one of the big ideas that you really have to understand. So a class is basically a custom variable, right? So till now, we've learned basic variables like strings, integers, characters, booleans, and so on. But what we're learning today is we're learning to make our own variables, right? And that's part of what makes Java so powerful, is that you can make and define your own variables, which is a class, and then use it to represent various things. So classes have attributes and behaviors, right? So classes can have their own variables and methods. So here we have an example of a dog, right? So we can create a dog variable. And so dogs have various attributes or properties, like their color, their fur color, their age, the type of dog. But then dogs also have certain behaviors, like barking, sleeping, and eating. So here we have a dog variable that we can then use to make 4 dogs. Right, so classes serve as a blueprint for an object. So an object is basically just a specific instance of a class. So when we create a new variable, we're basically creating an object. When we actually use the variable of our own custom type, we're creating an object, right? So a string is actually also an object, right? It's an instance of the string class. So basically, understanding what an object is kind of like a house built from a blueprint, right? So when you build a house, you draw plans showing this is how big a room has to be. It's going to be in this part of the house. It's going to be made with wood, and we're going to build it on the second floor. And right next to it, you're going to have a bathroom, and next to that, you're going to have a bedroom, and so on. Right? You set out the plan for how you want to build the house in a blueprint. Then you actually build the house, right? So a blueprint is like a class, right? It shows how you want to build the house, how you want to build the object. And then the house is the actual object, which is an instance of the class, right? So if we have a dog variable, then each dog is an object built from the dog class. So does that kind of make sense? Anyone have questions so far?
No.
Right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to make our own objects and classes. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make a class. So if I share my screen, awesome. So everyone see the screen? So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend we work at Facebook. Okay, we'll let Repel load. Okay. So now our scenario is that we work at a social media company. And what we can call it Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, Twitter, whatever you want, right? So at the social media companies, what we have is a lot of user profiles. So what we're going to do is we're going to be making our own variable for the user profile. So a user profile has a lot of things in it, right? So it's not, we have the name, we have your birthday, your gender, we have your status, we have lots of things, right? We have your device type, we have your photo, right? Among other things, we have a ton of information on you when you create a profile. We have your email, phone number. So, right, we have a ton of different things, right? So if we wanted to do it the traditional way that we've learned so far, we're going to have to create individual variables for each one. So string person one under name is going to be, let's call him Elon Musk. And then string person to name is Bill Gates. Right, let's say we have Elon Musk and Bill Gates. Then for each and every variable, we have to, each and everything in their profile, we have to create another variable. So string gender person one is going to be male. And so we'll have to keep on typing out all these different variables, right? So right now for one person or two people, it's fine. But when you're at the scale of Facebook or any social media company, you're going to have thousands of users, thousands or even millions of users. You can't keep typing out individual variables. So what you do is you make your own variable.
Sai, Some people are saying that they can't see it right. So can you just change it back to light mode?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our own variable. Right? And the way we do that is through making a class. So in Java, classes are in separate files. Each class has its own file. So if you notice, we've actually been inside of a class this entire time. We're in the main class, and that's in a file named main.java. So the name of the file has to match the name of the class. So what we're going to do is on our left bar, we have an option called files. Right? So if you hit them like this, you have files. And we're just going to go to this plus over here. And we're creating a new file called profile, I guess user profile.java. In the user profile, we're going to make a class called user profile. So public class user profile. So one thing with variables versus classes is that in classes we always capitalize everything, right? So up till now we've been using capital case, where the first letter is always lowercase, then every word after that is uppercase. Here, every word is going to be uppercase. So we've made a public class called the user profile. Then every class has a special method called the constructor. Right, so our constructor here is the constructor is always public, and it has to have the same name as the class. So we're going to come back to the constructor, but the first thing that we want to do in our class is we want to create our variables.
Program, close the door.
So all the variables of the class are going to be the same things that we talked about here. So name, birthday, gender, status, device type, photo, email, phone number. Right. So string name, and we're going to have string birthday. We're going to have string gender. String status.
Could you go a little slower?
Okay.
Thank you.
So are you guys caught up so far? So we have string status, string device type, and okay, since these are actually variables, we should put them in camel case. I'm just gonna make this stuff lowercase. Birthday, gender, status, device type. What else? String. We have photo. String. Email. And int phone number. Right, so we have all these properties that belong to every user profile. So these are the instance variables of the class. So in our constructor, we can set these values. So in our constructor, we're going to create parameters called name, email, and birthday, and gender. Right, so because whenever you create a social media profile, you have optional things that you can add, right? You don't always have to add your phone number. You don't always have to put a profile photo. You just have a couple basic things that you create your profile with. So all we're going to do is we're going to create user profiles just with name, email, birthday, and gender. So all you do now is we're going to say, name equals name, email equals email, birthday equals birthday, and gender is equal to gender. But one thing that's an issue is that we've already used the name and birthday. So what we have to do is we have to change these. So I'm just going to call this username. User email, user birthday, and user gender. So we have to change it over here.
Don't you have to set strings?
Oh yeah, that too. String username, string user email, string user birthday, and strings that. So user email, user birthday, and user gender, right? So now we have a complete constructor, right? So a constructor works just like any other method, right? So you can pass any number of parameters. You have to set the parameter type and the parameter name. And then in the constructor, it's called the constructor because we create an object from the class, right? So we're setting the various properties of the class, right? And then what's cool about a class is that we can also assign it behaviors, right? So in the dog example, the dog had bark and eat, right? So here we have things like we can do things like change status, or set the device type, or update photo, right? So what we want to do is we want to make methods to do those things. So public, and then these methods are just like any other method. So public void set status. And we're going to say string new status. And all we're going to say is status equals new status. And we can say, we can also make a method to get the status, because it's not really useful to create a class without being able to read any data, right? So you want to say public void public string get status. And we can say return status. And we can do this for every one of these, because every one of these can be updated, except your name. You don't change your name, but everything else people can change that, right? So public string get name is going to return name, and public string set birthday, because say they made a mistake, and we want to get string new birthday, and we're going to say birthday equals new birthday, and we can keep going with this. So public set gender. I'm going to say string new gender. And we can say gender equals new gender. And what else? We have we already did status. So now it's just photo, email, phone number, and device type. So public string. You can say set device type. So string new device. And we're going to say device is equal to new device. And we can say the same thing for this, public string get gender. And we can say string, we want to return gender. And public string. Right, so everything that we're doing, we're having to do once, so that way we can do it a lot quicker in the future. So public string get device. And it is called device type. Wait, this should be void. Void, so I'm not returning anything. And yeah. Okay, so what we have is get device type, and we're going to return device type. And what else? We have photo, email, and phone number. So public string get photo, public void and we can say return set photo, and we'll say string photo URL and say photo equals photo URL. Public string get photo is going to be string return photo, and after photo we just have email and phone number. So we're going to do the same thing again, and we're going to say public void set email, and we have our new email, and we're going to say email is equal to new email, and then we're going to say get email, and then we're going to say public void get phone number. It's going to be, oh, it's set. And it be int new number. And we have phone number. Phone equals new number. And then we're going to say public int get phone number. And we can say return phone. Right, so this is one class, right? So this may seem like a lot of work, But now we have our custom variable called user profile, and we can use that to easily create user profiles, create and update user profiles. So this is just one class that we can now create objects from. So objects are just instances of a class. So to use our new class, which is our new data type, we're going to go back to the main method. And so we can type so we're going to type out our new user profiles, but this time using our class, which is our custom data type. So the way you create an object starts out just like any other variable. You say the type. So previously it would have been string or int. Now the type is user profile. Is it USER? Okay, and then we give it a name. So we give it person1, right? So far, this is just like any other variable. You have the type and the variable name. And now we're going to set it equal, and this is where it gets different. We're going to say new user profile, and we can provide parameters to our constructor. So whenever you create a new class, you have to say new and then the constructor, the name of the class, which calls a constructor. So what we're doing now is we're going to pass parameters to our constructor. So the username is Elon Musk. The user email is going to be elon.musk@tesla.com. Maybe, I don't know what his birthday is, but Elon Musk's birthday. And Elon Musk is a man. Is it male?
I am right and you are right.
Okay. And now we can do the same thing for Bill Gates. So user profile person2 is equal to new user profile. And we're going to say Bill Gates. And his email, bill.gates@microsoft.com. And his birthday is at some time. We can Google it. If you guys want, you can Google it. Okay. And then he is also okay, thank you, Vasu. Great. So what would have taken a bunch of lines of just different variables is now down to two lines, and we've now created an entire user profile. So does everyone follow me so far? Does everyone understand what's going on?
Yep.
So what we've done is we've made our custom variable type called a user profile, and instead of having to create individual variables for each and every attribute of their profile, we can create it all in one go.
I have a question real quick.
Yep. Go ahead.
So the user profile is like it's like an account for like Elon
Yeah,
Musk.
user
and the
account,
model.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? So user profiles have properties, and then they also have methods, so things you can do to the profile. So for a user profile, things you can do are you can look at the attributes, look at their name, look at their email, or you can also change their name and change their email. So what we can do is we can call methods of the of the we can call methods of the class. Of the object. So what we've done here is we've created objects. So objects are just specific instances of the class. So like the class is our blueprint. Then we've called constructor, which constructed the house. In this case, it's constructed a user profile. So now we can call methods on the user profile and do things with it. So say I want to know the name of person 1. All I need to do now is system. So string user name is going to be, and so this is the format for calling a method. It's the object name dot and then the method name. So here we're going to call get name and then 2 parentheses. So this is just like we've called methods before, except now since the method belongs to this object, we put the object, a dot, and then the method name. So now if I do system dot out dot println user name, and if I run this, okay, there is an error. Where is the error? Return phone number. So we need to do phone number and return phone number. Okay, now if we run it, println, right? So this is just an example, but spelling is important in Java. So we have our profile, the profile object, and we've called the get name method, which gave us the name of our person, which is Elon Musk. Now let's say we want to change our method. Change our objects now, right? So let's say we want to change the email. So person1 dot set email, and here we can provide a new email. So maybe it's elon.musk, let's say, at spacex.com. Right, so now we've just modified the object and we've changed the email. So what you can do is we can print out the email and show change. So system.out.println, and here we can do person1.get email, and then right after this we can do system.out.println person1.setGetEmail again and show that the email has changed. Right, so we have an object that's the user profile of Elon Musk. His name is Elon Musk, and at first the email is elonmusk@tesla.com. Now it's elon.musk@spacex.com. So this is just like, so coming back to the house analogy, we made our blueprints, then we built a house, we constructed a house from the blueprints, and now we can go use the house, we can go live in it, we can open the garage door, lock the door, we can open the door, lock the door, flush the toilet, turn on the lights, right? So that's what the methods do, is the methods operate on the data in your custom variable. So does anyone have any questions on this? Great. Does everyone understand what an object does, what a class is, and what an object does?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so now let's go back to our presentation. And And we can go back. We've created a class, and now I'll turn it over to Vasu.
All right, so you guys saw when we were actually making our REPL, and when we were making that program there, you know how Sai kept using public, and when he was actually using his when he was actually creating those methods inside of the class, he was using public, and so what that means is that those methods and those variables can actually be accessed and used from anywhere in general. And private can only be accessed throughout inside of that one class. And trying to access it from the outside will return an error, and it's helpful for encapsulation, which we'll get into in a little bit. So here, if I just share my screen real quick. For some reason, oh, there it is. Can you guys see? All right.
No.
You guys.
Yeah.
Wait, can you see?
No.
Now we can. Now we can.
Okay. So, what we can do is we can actually go back into user profile, and we can go over here, and we can do something like, here we could do something like, how about public int, and then we can name this accounts. And since we have like 2 accounts, we can put 2 there. So if we go over to main, I'm not going to add on each account each time it happens, but what I can do is I can go over here, and I can actually, what we can do is we can actually do person1 dot, and then what did we name it? We named it accounts. Shoot, I spelled that wrong. Accounts. What this will do is, for some reason there's an error.
It's spelled right.
It should be working, right? So what this is going to do is, well, what it's supposed to do is, there we go. It's going to look, the program, the computer, it's going to look over here, and it's going to see system.out.println, and it's going to see person1.accounts. So it's going to say, okay, person1, that means I have to go back to the program user profile. It goes to user profile, it looks for the accounts variable, finds this one, it sees public, so that means, hey, I can actually access this, I can actually access this variable, and it sees its value is 2. So it'll return over here 2. So if we actually run it, we'll see down here, it shows 2. Then if we change this to private, what it'll do is it will, as you can see, there's already an error there, but when it runs it, it's going to give an error, and it's going to say accounts has private access and user profile, and we're going to get more into that when we get into encapsulation. So yeah.
So are there any questions on this? Right, so what public versus private does is it specifies where you can access or use a variable or method. Right, so since Vasu set accounts in user profile to private, you can only access accounts from within user profiles. From any method inside user profile, you can access accounts, but you can't access it from the main method. So variables and methods also have a third possible state, and it's called static. We don't use it as much, but it's also something, but it is pretty useful. So up till now, yeah, last class I told you that all methods started with public static void or public static int, right? So the reason we did static is because static allows a method to be a property of a class and not just an object, right? So over here, what we've done in our code is we have, let me share my screen. Right. So in our code, we've created objects from the user profile class. Right. So everything here is nothing here is static. Right. That means that it is a property of an object. Right. So you need to create an object in order to use these methods and these classes. However, if something is static, you can use it from anywhere you want. Right, so a static method, so generally we use these with things that are constant or things that are helper functions, right? So a good example of a static method and of static class, of static properties and static methods are the map class. So there's an entire class in Java called map. And so the map class has lots of things that are related to map. So an example of a static variable is pi. So up till now, we've actually been typing out double pi is equal to 3.14, but you don't actually need to do that. What you can do is say system.out.println the value of pi is math.pi, right? So math.pi is static. We're accessing the pi property of the math class, which is a static property. So if I do this, I get a much more detailed number for pi. And so math also has static methods. So things like powers, or like exponents. So system.out.println, and we can say the value, you can say 2 to the power of 3 is, and what we can say is math.how, and now we can pass in two numbers, so 2, 3. So what it's going to do is going to say find 2 to the power of 3 and give us 8. When it decides to run, right? So it took 2 and 3 and it raised 2 to the power of 3 and it gave us 8. Right, so the entire map class is a lot of static methods and properties, right? And so because they're static, they're useful as helper functions. So math is just generally one example where you'll end up using a lot of static properties and methods. But if we wanted to make our own, just like we did last week, we can do that. So maybe we want to create something called maybe we want to know what website the profile belongs to. So static public static string, and what we can say is public static string website name, and we can call this whatever platform you want. So say maybe it's Twitter. So right now, all our profiles are for Twitter. So now, instead of calling, so now because it's static, it's a property of the profile class and not of the object. So if I try and say system.out.println, the profiles belong to, and then now I can say user profile website name, and if I do this, it's going to say the profiles belong to Twitter, right? Because now we can type it, the string website name is a property of the class and not of any object. So if I actually try to type out an object, it's going to throw an error. So if I say person2.website name, we're going to get an error. Or not. Okay, but you see how you could access it from you can access it from the class. You don't need to have an object. Right. So here I didn't create any new objects. I'm just accessing it from the class. So are there any questions on what static does? Right. It lets you, without creating any new objects, it lets you just access variables and methods directly. That doesn't mean you can't access them from an object, but it lets you access them directly. Any questions on that? So everyone understands what public, private, and static does, right? So now I'm going to turn it over to Vasu to explain why we care about public versus private. And that's because of encapsulation. So Vasu?
Encapsulation. So when I told you guys that we were going to be talking about public versus private, private is used in encapsulation. And what encapsulation does is it protects your variables, your objects, your methods, all those things from actually being accessed in a different program. And it's pretty easy. You just have to add in private there, but it's really helpful when it comes to actually protecting your stuff and actually like deciding what you want the user to see. For example, when you guys actually like on the dashboard of a car, you'll see the speed, which would be like in this case a public variable. You'd see how much gas you have left in your tank, public. But then what you won't see is like all the stuff that's going on in the backhand, all the different variables that are always being accounted for, and those are all private variables. And so that's basically how you can also determine exactly what the user gets to see, what they don't get to see. And yeah, and as you can see in the bottom, it says encapsulate int has private access in main. And when I actually showed you guys the private variable there, you'd see that it means that you can't actually access it. And so what we could do is we could actually, one second if I can share my screen. Can you guys see?
Yep, we can see it.
All right. So what we can do is we can go to user profile and we could set up, exactly like, we could do string, private string, browser, web browser. And that would basically be exactly what web browser they actually got it from. So let's say they got it from Chrome. Now in the main class where you actually get to see everything, if you actually try to see, okay, what browser are they accessing it from? If the user tries to see exactly what browser they're accessing it from, we could do system.out.println. Then we could go person1 dot browser, I think, right? Yeah, web browser. And then what this is going to do is, well, what it's supposed to do is the computer is going to see this. It's going to go down. It's going to go down. It's going to get over to here. And it's going to see, okay, I need to go over to person1, the actual object, and I need to find out exactly what web browser they're working on. So it goes over to user profile and it looks for, okay, what web browser is it working on? It goes into here. And normally, if this was public or if it was just normal, it would actually give it back. But since it's private, it's saying this program saying, no, we're not going to give you exactly what web browser they're using. And so it's going to show an error over here. And so, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, I spelled it wrong, but
Oh.
yeah.
So going back to encapsulation, the entire idea behind encapsulation is that you want to reduce complexity, right? So in a car, you have 3 pedals. You have the accelerator and brake, and then maybe a clutch if you have a manual car. But you have a maximum of 3 pedals. And so those are like your public methods. But in the background, there's a ton of different things going on in the engine, like valve timing and fuel injection and spark timing and a ton of things that the engine accounts for that you don't have to look at, right? So it's the idea of hiding things that people don't need to see, right, in order to make it more simple. So you don't need to know the exact spark timing. You don't care about the exact amount of fuel that's being injected into the cylinder. All you care about is that you just press the accelerator and you go. Go means go, stop means stop. That's all you really care about. So the entire idea is with encapsulation is to make it simpler. So with encapsulation, if you're following encapsulation 100%, all your variables should ideally be private. And then if you want to actually use a variable and make it accessible to a user, you'd make getter and setter methods. So kind of like what we did with the user profile, where we have a method to get name and set name, or get email and set email, right? So with encapsulation, in order to reduce complexity and make your code easier to look at, what you want to do is you want to make all your methods public, or most of your methods public, but all your variables have to be private. And then if you want to see a variable, you have to expose it through a method. So, which is pretty much exactly what we did with our user profile. So our last thing that we want to leave you guys off with is a challenge. And what we want you to do is we want to make a class that represents a quadratic function. So the class needs to store the values of A, B, and C, right? So usually when you talk about a quadratic equation, you see ax squared equals plus bx plus c. So we want you to store the A, B, and C, right? And then following the principles of encapsulation, all A, B, and C should be private, and you want to have getter and setter methods for A, B, and C, right? Then we can do things with a quadratic function, which would be our method. So we can calculate the x value at the vertex. We can calculate the y value for any given x. Using this method, you can then calculate the y value of the vertex by calculating the x value and calculating the y value for any given x. And then you can use the quadratic equation to calculate the first and second zeros. So just assume that every function that you type in is going to have 2 zeros. So create a class for a quadratic function, and then you can, in the main method, you can create objects with specific values of A, B, and C and see how it works out. So that's your challenge for today, and we'll go over it at the start of next class. So are there any questions? Any questions? Anyone? Does everyone understand the entire idea behind encapsulation? You get that a class is like a blueprint, and then an object is like a house. Then the methods are actually like going inside the house and using it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if there's no more questions, then we are done for today. And remember to complete your quadratic function calculator project.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right. So see you guys all on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.